This is Fam Famojuro, aka Fam the Tank Man, from the Tank Museum in the UK, which houses the largest collection of tanks in the world. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and today we're breaking down a selection of tanks and armoured vehicles from across movies and TV, including Fury, The Pacific, and The Walking Dead.
That appears to be a British chieftain main battle tank, which you wouldn't usually see on the streets in America. Fury is one of our vehicles. Back when the producers were interested in having real tanks in their film, they saw our Sherman and they were very much interested in using it for their filming. So that tank became Fury. Yeah, the Type 95 Hargo is definitely one of my favorite tanks, even though most people just kind of say they're rubbish. I mean, they weren't great. The Hargo is no match for a Sherman, that's for sure.
The Tank Museum are currently running a fundraiser for their most ambitious project ever, restoring their King Tiger V2 back to running condition. If you want to support that fundraiser and that project, then check out the link in the description below. Down there, you'll also find a link to our Patreon where you can get the longer director's cut edition of this episode. More of Fam and the Tank Museum to come in future videos, but for now, I'll throw it over to Fam.
All right, let's get the boys out. Get them off, give me last man.
All right, lady, you were the man.
Button up.
Everybody out!
So obviously we're here at the Tank Museum and Fury is one of our vehicles. Back when the producers were interested in having real tanks in their film, they saw our Sherman and they were very much interested in using it for their filming. So that tank became Fury. The actual vehicle itself is an M4A2 E8 Sherman. Now a lot of people like to sort of say, oh, Fury's really unrealistic. What I will say is what we're seeing here, I really like this because we're actually seeing a Sherman being used what it was designed for, supporting infantry. At the end of the day, when the Sherman first came about, it's got originally had a 75mm gun, a very good high explosive round, and it was there to support infantry on the battlefield, which is what we're seeing right here. Lots of people like to pick apart the fight with the Tiger later on, but this is, what you're looking at is a accurate representation of how a Sherman would be used in the field in World War II. I have sat in that, the bow machine gunner position in Fury actually, which is kind of funny to see that here. I think another thing worth pointing out is, like, in terms of the making of this film, it looks like they're quite literally filming inside that tank, but they're not. They had a scaled up version of Fury specifically to shoot the internal shots. So as far as I'm aware, none of the shots inside the tank in this film were actually the inside of our tank Fury. It was like a separate piece, essentially a mock-up. But you can't tell because it's just so well produced. I mean, we film inside tanks here at the museum and the guys know how difficult it can be to film. A lot of the time we're using like 16mm lenses because that's the only way to really get decent footage of the inside of a tank with a presenter in it. Pretty cool depiction of an ambush tactic that we saw just there. So what you would have seen in that shot is the German tank hit the rear tank first. And the idea behind ambush tactics, or one of the tactics, is to basically knock out either usually the tank at the front or the back first. And what you then have is you've got all the vehicles in between, which can't really move backwards or forwards because they've got a dead tank there, which then just allows that tank to then be pick off, or the anti-tank gun to pick off all the rest of those units. I think in reality, a well-trained German crew would normally take the guys at the front first, or the back, and then just pick them all off. But yeah, it's a cool depiction. But again, it's not the most historically accurate, but it's cool to see ambush tactics being used like that, or being shown off in a film. This scene that we're seeing here, well, first of all, that's Tiger 131. That is another tank in our collection. So when the producers came here, they wanted a Sherman because that was like the hero tank of the film. But when they saw that we also had a running Tiger 1, and it's the only running one in the world that has a genuine Maybach HL230 engine in it, they started to sort of negotiate or debate whether or not they could use it for the film. Now, we were very much like, like, if anything, this is a priceless vehicle, Tiger 131. It was the first working German Tiger that was captured by British troops in World War II. It was captured in Tunisia in 1943 and then shipped back over to England. So we were very much like, look, we understand that like you're trying to add authenticity to a film, but like if anything goes wrong with it, like it's irreplaceable. You can't just phone up Maybach and be like, hey, have you got any HL230s in backstock? They did some negotiating, and there are scenes where Tiger 131 is being used in this film. For the scenes, I believe when it's a little bit moving a bit faster or going through mud, I think they used either CGI or it was a mock-up. But yeah, this is the first modern film to have a real Tiger, a real functioning World War II German Tiger in it. So it's very, very cool to see. Now, in this particular scene, this is the one where everyone starts going like, oh, historical accuracies. Why would a German tank crew just drive out of smoke and expose themselves? You could argue that, but I think you also need to keep in mind this film is set in 1945. At this point in the war, Germany's running out of everything. They're running out of resources. They're running out of morale. They're running out of fuel. They're running out of good tank crews. But they're still using tanks like the Tiger, the Panther, and they're tanks that need good crews for them to function properly. Again, whether it would happen or not, I don't really know, but I don't think it's that unfeasible. If it was me, if I was the German tank commander, I probably would have pulled back, because if I know that there's going to be enemy tanks in front of me, they're going to have to push forward or wait for the smoke to dissipate.
So what my takeaway from that is if EXP gets big enough, we can rent a tank from you.
Never know. It probably isn't out of the question. It might happen. They never know.
If that's not a reason to support the Patreon.
Exactly. Support these guys. Support EXP on Patreon. Feel free to support the Tank Museum as well. We'll get these guys into a position where they can rent a tank. Never know. It could happen. So what I will say is the 76mm on the hero tank on Fury there has more than enough penetrative power to take a round straight through the front of that flat plate of the Tiger. I just love how well this film is put together. Like the internal tank shots again. Like even I don't look at that and think that's not a real tank. It's just so well done.
That's the difference between accuracy and authenticity for me. Is does it feel real in the moment? Like while playing a game, while watching a film?
100%. That we were having this conversation the other day. It's like, is it necessarily 100% authentic, accurate? Maybe not. Is it authentic? Yes. These are you're looking at real World War II tanks, real World War II armor, kicking it around in a muddy field, taking shots at each other. Obviously, the shots are all edited in, but it's cool. Two things. So obviously the Tiger with its 88mm gun there takes a shot at the side of Fury and it hits all the logs that are on the side. There has been quite a bit of debate as to whether or not extra stuff on your tank can really function as proper armor when you consider the amount of effort and time that goes into actually fabricating armor plate. The way I think of it is, especially with certain types of ammunition like shape charge based ammunition or high explosive rounds, if you've got more stuff on the outside of your tank, it is going to add more of a layer of protection. When it comes to stuff like armor piercing or high velocity rounds like that, maybe less so. But there is also another side of it that very few people seem to talk or think about, and that is the psychological aspect of it. If you imagine that you're an Allied tank crew, you're in a Sherman in World War II, you know the armor on your tank is not as good as what's on German tanks. You know that the guns you have are not as good as your guns, and that an 88mm round or even a 75mm from like a Pak 40 is going to have no issue smashing a hole straight through your tank. If you know there is more matter between you and the outside world, that is going to help you psychologically, possibly more than it will physically. So we've got tanks there in the background, Japanese tanks. They appear to be Type 95 Hargos. But yeah, the Type 95 Hargo is definitely one of my favorite tanks, even though most people just kind of say they're rubbish. I mean, they weren't great, but there were some cool things about them in terms of design.
Am I right in saying that Japanese armor was very thin compared to a lot of other nations' armor?
Yeah, no, Japanese armor was generally very thin. A lot of people describe Japanese World War II tanks as having paper-thin armor. I think the thing that people need to keep in mind though is they didn't design bad tanks per se, but their focus wasn't on armored vehicles. When it came to like the Pacific Theater, you know, the Japanese are focusing on primarily naval and air units, but it did make sense they obviously were going to use tanks anyway. I mean, the Type 95 Hargo was actually an interwar period vehicle anyway. It entered service in the early 30s. They saw a lot of use against the Chinese in the Second Sino-Japanese War, and they're basically just primarily designed to take on just infantry. They weren't really designed to take on other tanks, but they wouldn't have had any issue if they were fighting the Chinese, because they wouldn't have had access to a lot of armor anyway. You're looking at a 37mm gun. It's not particularly big, but again, it doesn't need to be because it fit the role of what they needed it for. I was lucky enough to be inside the world's oldest running and only running Type 95 Hargo. There was a guy who owned it, a lovely guy called Oliver Barnum, who has now sold it back to the Japanese, funnily enough. Yeah, I got to see the only running Type 95 Hargo in the world. I got to go inside it whilst it was running. They're incredibly cramped vehicles. They're designed for a crew of 3. I was in there and you could barely fit another person in there. The turret is for one person, the commander. The commander's firing the gun, they're firing the 5 o'clock machine gun, which is a really weird position with the Hargo. They're loading the gun, they're also commanding the crew. So in terms of ergonomics, it wasn't a particularly good tank at all. Then you have the driver and you had a bow machine gunner. So yeah, incredibly cramped vehicles. Now, I did do some research specifically about the vehicles in the Pacific, these Hargos, and it turns out that what you're actually looking at is a really well-made replica. Apparently they were built in 2009 by the Melbourne City Engineering company. From looking at it on screen, I think that's quite passable as a real tank. I really don't think you would notice the difference. So really good job with the guys who actually made them, if they are replicas. Yeah, but the Hargo is no match for a Sherman, that's for sure.
You can get even more tank chat featuring Fam by becoming a patron and checking out the extended Director's Cut edition of this episode. For EXP's first birthday, we are running a sale over on our Patreon. All new patrons can get their first month for half price by using the code BIRTHDAY, or you can get 3 months free by choosing an annual subscription, which means you can get access to over an entire year's worth of extended Director's Cut episodes and exclusive Patreon content for half price up until the end of February. We've also got a sale on our merch, 10% off all orders on expvideo.info, including our limited edition birthday t-shirt by using code BIRTHDAY10. Becoming an EXP patron helps to support this channel. It allows us to bring on these wonderful experts and lets us continue to make cool content like this. But whether you join the EXP Patreon or you watch along here on YouTube, I want to say thank you for watching our content, and now I'll get back to the video.
All Quiet on the Western Front, absolutely fantastic film. If you guys haven't watched it, do give it a watch. I feel like there aren't enough war films that focus on World War I. So what we've got German troops on the Western Front who are about to experience tanks for the very first time. And in the case of this scene, they are going up against the French Saint-Chamond. I've seen a lot of, you sometimes see this scene circulated a lot online with the caption of the first tank ever used in World War I. The Saint-Chamond was not the first tank to be used on the battlefield in World War I. The first tank to be used was, funny enough, the British Mark I, which didn't see much success at all. But what you are likely seeing as being depicted here is these German troops are seeing tanks for the very first time. It's one of those things when you think about it would have been a terrifying aspect. They're just shooting at this thing and nothing they're using is working against it. As you can see there, just rounds are bouncing off the front.
This scene does a great job of showcasing that these troops do not have the experience in dealing with this threat. There is no doctrine that they have been trained to engage with to take on a tank.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the tank was invented to break that stalemate of trench warfare. It very much did it, not perfectly, but with like the British Mark I's, they proved that with a bit of refinement they could work. I will say though, the Saint-Chamond that we actually see there isn't a real tank. That is actually a brilliant replica built on top of a Soviet BMP. The reason we know that is because the scene earlier on, when you see the road wheels when it stops right next to the camera, it's got like these starry bits on the road wheels. And Soviet vehicles, especially the BMP series, have those sets of road wheels. So what you're looking at is, in a weird way, it's real armor, but it's not a real World War I tank, but a really good way of having a replica on a real piece of armor. Yeah, we have a section in our trench system where we've got German mannequins, and right in front of them we've got a Mark I coming up over a trench, and they're essentially saying like, what in God's name is that? Like, run for your life. A lot of German troops, there were accounts of German troops describing tanks as being like an armored crocodile or like a tortoise coming over the trenches, because they'd never seen anything like it. Now, although tanks did change the nature of warfare, they were certainly not invincible, as we can see here. A grenade in like a pistol port, you're gonna do some serious damage on the inside of a tank. Tanks were far from invincible. It didn't take long for the Germans to start countering tanks.
Yeah, I didn't realize that one of the strategies they used in World War I, or one of the tools they used, one of the weapons they used, was to just bundle a bunch of grenades together into an anti-tank grenade.
Yep, very much so. Essentially, just you've got a bigger explosive charge. They just take the explosive charge from the end of the stick hand grenades, or potato mashers, I think the British ended up dubbing them. Bigger explosive charge, throw it at the top of a tank, and that's going to do a decent amount of damage. If you're going to put grenades on like tracks are a pretty good weak point when it comes to tanks. The same into World War II as well. At the end of the day, if you knock out the tracks on a tank, it goes from being a tank to an armored vehicle. And if you're still being shot at, you're not an armored vehicle for much longer. So, Walking Dead, guys, don't hate me. I have never actually seen this series, but it does. I should probably add it to my watch list. That appears to be a British chieftain main battle tank, which you wouldn't usually see on the streets in America. That is very much still a chieftain that we're seeing the bottom of. How do we know this? Two main reasons. Number one, the chieftain has a V-shaped hull. So underneath the chieftain, instead of having a flat bottom, it's got a slight V. The reason for that is so that if any anti-tank mines or explosives go off, primarily anti-tank mines go off underneath the vehicle, instead of just going straight through the flat bottom of the belly of a tank, that slight curvature can deflect the blast outwards, going between the road wheels on the suspension units instead.
So is he climbing up through the escape hatch there?
So he just climbed up into what looked to be an escape hatch. Now, this is the part where we get to pick this apart. The Chieftain does not have an escape hatch on the bottom of the hull. For one main reason, you don't usually see escape hatches on the bottom of more modern, I say modern, the Chieftain came out like early 60s, on modernish main battle tanks, because having a hatch at the bottom is a massive, massive weak point, especially if you've got something like an anti-tank or anti-vehicle mine that goes off underneath. There is also no space for a escape hatch on the bottom of a Chieftain. The Chieftain has a turret basket, so when the turret of a tank moves, everything on the inside moves with it, or at least most of it. The commander, the gunner, and the loader are all in the turret basket, which means they move with the turret as it turns. If you have a turret basket, there's no way you can't have an escape hatch at the bottom. It just doesn't structurally make sense in that case. Yeah, so it is interesting, because what you are looking at in the inside of these interior shots here, for me, it does confuse me a bit. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't, because that appears to be the inside of a real British Chieftain main battle tank. How do we know this? There is a brief moment just as he closes the hatch, which I've just gone back to, and just to the side of him there is a red lever, and behind that there's a white box. What that is, those are the controls for a Chieftain NBC, nuclear biological chemical warfare pack. So that is 100%, that has to be the inside of a real tank. And on top of that, if you look just to the left of it, again, this is meant to be in America, that is a British British plug socket. By the way, the most best designed plug socket in the world. Not just being biased because we're British.
We're weirdly proud about our plug sockets, but
they're brilliant. They're brilliant. You cannot plug it in without the first all the pins being lined up. Even if the first pin goes, I'm not going to go into this. I'm now ranting about plug sockets. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry, guys. If you're still here in this part of the video, thank you for being patient with me. But yeah, so this does appear to be the inside of a real British Chieftain main battle tank. Now, what also confused me here a bit is that there is way too much space in the inside of that tank. The turret basket is completely gone. I actually wonder if they've taken the engine out of this thing and they've extended it all the way backwards. I could be wrong, but there's definitely no way there's that much space inside a Chieftain. I was going to say the Chieftain has at the top of the commander's hatch a GPMG, general purpose machine gun. No, that looks Dave, I might need your help here. Does that appear to be a 50 cal?
Yeah, that's an M2 Browning 50 cal machine gun.
Yeah, that would definitely not come standard with a Chieftain. It is worth saying, when it comes to filming on the inside of tanks, in like films and shows and stuff like that, you usually have to make some sort of mock-up because, again, there isn't room on the inside of a tank to be able to film properly. We mentioned this earlier with Fury. It had a bigger scale mocked up interior for the internal shots for filming. What we are looking at is real internal shots of a tank, presumably. There's so much stuff there that I know from a Chieftain, because we've got many in our collection, and I'm quite familiar with the interior of a British Chieftain main battle tank. So yeah, we're looking at real interior shots of a Chieftain, heavily modified. We have to mention, like, the turret basket is gone, the breach doesn't appear to be there at all. In fact, I think his head is basically where the breach would be. But props to these guys actually getting internal shots of a tank, because that is a real tank from what we can see.
Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like the video to show your support, subscribe for more stuff like this, and be sure to check out the link in the description for the Tank Museum's amazing fundraiser. As always, I want to give a massive shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon for continuing to support EXP and for continuing to allow us to make cool content like this. Stay tuned for more Fam and the Tank Museum coming very soon, but until then, thank you again for watching, and we will see you very soon.